It is June. I got late, but I'm here. We're talking about books I read this month, which would have been last month, which is May. Alright, so this month, May, well, we're in June now, but in May I read 7 books. I passed my book goal of 30 books for the year, very conservative goal. It's done. I probably will double it. Let's see how it goes. I'm not going to change the goal, but we are going to keep it there and just see what can happen, okay? So the first book this month was Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, which is number 3 in the Bridgerton series, and it's Bridgerton season, okay? We have season 3 now, with Colin and Penelope, and Colin is ABC the third, Bridgerton sibling, and in the book order he would have been, actually I'm lying, in book order he was number 4, but they have reversed it in the show, or flipped it in the show, so that they were number 3, and yes, he's still the third Bridgerton sibling, and they're named alphabetically. So this book I gave a 3 out of 5. I don't think it's that great, and mostly because I was annoyed by Colin. I think that he was a little bit like obtuse and annoyed, and like the jealousy, and I get it, we are allowed to have human feelings, but the jealousy towards Penn was a little bit weird for me to read, and I just couldn't get behind it. I think overall, just like they're trying to show in the series, like he's a sweet character, for a male, very in touch with his feelings, so on and so forth, very sensitive, but it was just like not toxic, but I just couldn't get past like the way he treated her, and then just all of a sudden one day woke up like, oh wow, I'm in love with Penelope, like get a clue please. So yeah, it was a 3 out of 5 for me. Don't have much more to say about it, but I will say I'm super excited. I'll talk about the show a little bit. I'm super excited about the next Benedict's book, which is not one of my favorite books. My favorite of the Bridgerton series is actually Eloise's book, and I guess we'll have a couple years to go, maybe 4 or 5 years to go for that, at the rate that the producers are going. So let's see how it goes, but it's been interesting to see their kind of character development so far. Okay, so that's it on number 1. Number 2 is a 5-star for me. It's a historical romance. This was an advanced reader copy for me. So this one was fun. This one was about this girl who's in the aristocracy, and ever since she was growing up, like her family, they're a little bit more, well, the parents are in love, which, you know, back in those days it was all business transactions, so it was weird to have love matches, and she was, their family had some scandal because they're a little bit, they go against the grain basically, and so she's having that background, and she's kind of, she doesn't necessarily want to marry. I mean, I think she'd like it, but she doesn't necessarily want to, but she's made up this character, she's made up this Viscount who she basically uses to ward off suitors. She basically uses this character to ward off suitors, and so this person shows up on her doorstep. He's a con artist. He grew up as a con artist, and he basically hears about this girl's like what she's doing, which is inventing this person and having her sibling, this is kind of a spoiler, having her sibling, like from the hill, her sibling travels a lot, and she has him send letters as this guy that she's dating from different ports to say like, hey, he's away, he's doing all these things, but he's a real person. So she's invented this person who existed at some point, but I guess they think he's actually dead, and so he comes into her life, and also there's a family estate. This person, this Viscount, there's an estate, and they've just had misfortune in all of their family, so he's the last one. Like the older men they kept dying, father, cousin, all these people, all the potential heirs kept dying, and so they thought he was dead too, and so there's this whole quest to find out that the people who, the wives, the widows of those men are very suspicious. They all live together in the family home, and they're very suspicious of him, and so they are kind of on this like quest to oust him and to show him up as fake, and they go sending persons to look for the real Vandermeer is the name of the title. Anyways, turns out, I'll just say he had a reason to be there, and they have attempts on his life and stuff like that, and so there's a little bit of that kind of drama and stuff, but the romance was good. It was good banter, it was good conversation between them, and you know, I like when the conversation, it feels plausible, and I think it did. And the situation they were in, there was drama surrounding whether or not he was really my count, but there wasn't anything that was just like, oh, like just glaringly ridiculous, and not in an entertaining way, just in an annoying way. So that was good. So I don't think it's been a while, so I'm probably not giving enough details, but yeah, it was a good 5 out of 5 for me, and I want to read the next installments, but that TBR list is heavy right now, so we'll get there. The third book this month is She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker-Chan. Now this book I gave a 4-star, and I'll tell you why. So it was a really good book. I think one of the blurbs that recommends it says it's like Mulan meets, yeah, I can't remember the comparison, but basically it's this girl who assumes the role of her boy cousin, or is it her brother? I'm forgetting now, but one of her male relatives. And this was, of course, in a time where girls weren't really seen as useful, there's a lot of, I guess, mysticism in that time as well. So on top of the social, the girls weren't like appreciated. They really didn't care if they died or not. Some boys were seen as having special gifts and special destinies, and so she assumed the role of her brother. And this was in a time of great famine. It was a very terrible time. So it's based in a true historical time in China. She assumed her brother's life, went to this monastery, and was very persistent about being let in. Now, going to a monastery was something people did when their families couldn't feed them. They'd send the young boys to join the monastery, but everybody wasn't accepted. Like, imagine present day, like Buckingham Palace, like everybody stands outside viewing it, right? It was kind of like that, where inside they'd have people who they had enough means to feed themselves, feed the monks. They were just, you know, monks. They train as monks in literacy and all the prayers and stuff like that. But for they'd select, right? They'd select who they'd take, and people would come and get turned away. And she came and got turned away multiple times, and she just wouldn't leave. So they accepted her into the monastery, and she basically, long and short, like hid that she was a girl. Before puberty didn't matter, she was also younger than them, and she didn't know how to read, so she was being taught all these things and having to, I guess, perform at a higher physical and mental level, achievement level than her age. And all of this time she wasn't telling anyone. She had a close friend who was a male, and he figured out her secret at some point, but they see themselves as brothers, and so they protected her. So I thought this book was really special because it's rare to see like a story. For people in the queer community, for them it was a story about a trans man, and that was special for them. But for me, I think it was more than that. I think it was special because it gave a look into like just the strength of a woman and her cunning, and like being able to hold that secret, being able to be determined, and being able to perform. And I mentioned earlier that there was like I use the word mysticism or supernatural element, where she could actually see ghosts, and that I think becomes important at some parts of the story. And I think that made it a little bit different as well, as opposed to just like fiction based on a historical time, even though it was taken from the unique perspective of a woman who became a man, in terms of outward appearance. But I think this book was just boring in the middle. Like it created this whole world, and that's my challenge with, I think a couple months ago, I don't know if I did a video review, I think I did, but that book by Namina Forna, that young adult book, my challenge when they're creating a whole world, it can get very boring in the middle, and I think it's helpful for that age, like that young adult world where you get immersed, you know. So think about how when you read Harry Potter for the first time, and it's describing all these things, and the age I was at that time, I was so interested in all of the ways, like I was just fascinated by that world that J.K. Rowling created. But now reading this book, I'm just like bored in the middle, you know. And what I'm calling boring for somebody who's really interested in like war and tactics, I think it showed how clever she was, and you got to see more of her personality in that sense. But in terms of like character, and I wouldn't say there was no character development, because it's showing how she had to be cunning, how she had to be one step ahead of her enemies. It's showing the background of the enemies and stuff like that. But it just wasn't exciting. There were exciting parts in it. I think it like picked back up at the last third or last quarter of the book. But yeah, I think it was something I wish this book was written as a YA book. It's not a YA book because it's got strong language, it's got sexual content, and so it's not something that, you know, you'd give a child to read. But if they had written it so that it was YA, same topics, same subject matters, either just kind of made the sex scenes more implied, for example, I think it could have been a really good YA book for young girls, because it showed, and also of course for trans boys, because it could have showed what that kind of resilience and strength looks like, which when you look at contemporary fiction these days, people don't have to dig that deep to survive, you know what I mean? And I think that's what made this story special, like the way the character had to literally fight everything, like literally fighting your enemies, like actually fighting enemies to survive, actually outwitting people, stuff like that. And you don't see that perspective from a girl a lot. I think boys got a lot of that. They get stories like that. They have superheroes, but you don't get it a lot for girls. So I kind of wish it was young adult for that reason. But yeah, it was a good book, 4 to 5. It was just kind of boring for me in the middle, and so I couldn't give it that 5. But yeah, I'd read it again. I'd read it again to see more. I feel like it's the kind of book you'd pick up things again when you read it again. And yeah, it just showed to me strength of a woman. I'd summarize it's just like strength of a woman, and not just for the main character, but for the secondary character who she later comes to become her partner. I'll say strength of a woman. The next one is called Impassioned by Darcy Burke, and I gave that one a 4 out of 5 stars. Again, this is a historical romance. This is number 2 in the Phoenix Club series. I have not read number 1. And this one, Gaming Hell Story, which I love those. And it is, they're a married couple, and they they basically see each other a couple of times a year, and you know how it is, they're always attracted to each other, but they don't actually like spend time together, etc. And she's like supposed to be like really prim and proper, and like not, I don't know, interested in the physicality of marriage. Yeah, so some parts of this book were really funny, because this lady would come to her husband and be like, yeah, it's that time. And he would be like, I'm sorry, what? Because he's just expecting her, like he left her in the country and he's expecting her to like not be interested in some stuff. And so he just kept getting confused when she like was like, yeah, I've showed up on your doorstep, which is technically my doorstep too, we're married. Okay, let's get busy. You know, I want a baby. So I think that was really funny sometimes, and yeah, it was a good read. I enjoyed it. The book reminded me of another book. There's a Grace Calloway book called Her Husband's Harlots, and that's because they basically, it's kind of, so the critiques on that book is that it's like cheating, because basically this couple, and it happens in this book as well, this couple, they basically, one of them disguised themselves to kind of meet with the other under the guise of helping them or helping their relationship along and their intimacy issues along and solving that. And so one partner didn't know it was their wife, and so technically, like, it could have been like the man was cheating. And so if that bothers you, you might not want to read this, but yeah, it was entertaining. And I think they, you know, I think it was just one of those books, as with most of these, right? They just failed to communicate, and so you have this roundabout way of coming back to each other, when really if you had two decent conversations, you would have solved the problem. But yeah, still a 4 out of 5 for me. So here is the fifth. This is Africa is Not a Country. This is one of my 2 favorites that I read this month. So this book is basically an education. It's amazing. It's so good at giving context for Africa, for the continent of Africa, which has 54 countries. It is not one country, but when people talk about Africa, you know, they don't just, when you even 4 positive things like going on vacation. Yeah, I went to Africa. Okay, where? You don't say, yeah, I went to America. I mean, people say that when they're going to, like, you know, talk about immigration or something, but they say, yeah, I'm going to New York, I'm going to Boston, I'm going to Miami. You know, they'll refer to it as the city, not even the state, right? They don't refer to the continent. They'll say North America. If they're going to Brazil, they'll say they're going to Brazil. They're not going to say they're going to South America. So yeah, this was a 5 out of 5 for me. This is one of those books I want a physical copy of it. I want people to read it. I want to talk about it with people. You know, it was funny. It was caustic sometimes, and it needed to be. You know, it talked about America from the lens of film, from the lens of history, from the lens of cultural impact and cultural, how it was formed culturally, you know, so all the colonization of different countries. It talked about it from popular culture, it talked about it from food, and it gave anecdotes, it gave enough for you to have a good, like a basic knowledge. If you never knew anything about Africa, you would be able to have a conversation with someone from there, even if it's just, you know, I read this, you know, and it's not just the propaganda that you see in the news, even the information about some of the major social media things. So the Coney, which I completely forgot, Coney 2012, I think it was, which was like crazy, and what happened behind that and how that movement started and who this person was. And you know, you forget about these monumental things that in terms of the media and how Africa is represented, and it brought all of these things behind you, context and that. So I just think it was, like I said, an education. It was hilarious too. I think the one criticism I had was that the author is clearly Nigerian. His references he speaks about all of Africa for the most part. He touches on every African country, but the personal references are Nigerian, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think you can only speak from your experience, right? But if, for example, you hated a Nigerian, like obviously, and he's telling you that their jollof rice is superior, like you're gonna have a problem, right? But there's nothing wrong with that. I think it was such a good book, and I love the cover. I love the cover. It's colorful, but also I love when a book can use white space. A lot of the covers these days, like, white space is not the enemy. There's literally a book called White Space is Not Your Enemy. It speaks about design and stuff like that, and people like covers now are just so busy, but I think it gave the use of white and then the use of color with it, the use of black. I really liked that cover, and I would want this kind of book to be like a coffee table book, and just like, it's kind of not, because it's non-fiction, and coffee table books tend to be a lot more picture heavy and like, or short. You can pick up and do a short story, but I just feel like this kind of book, when I think of a coffee book, it's something I want us to look at and have conversations about, you know. So it was that kind of book for me. 5 out of 5, would recommend, would read again, would recommend it to someone. Yeah. Alright, so book number 6, this one is called Yellowface, and it is by Yellowface by RF Kuang. This book is a mess. This book is a good book. It's a good book. I gave it 4 out of 5. I like when fiction is entertaining but also plausible. Like, there's fiction that there is no in hell. Like, you know, when you're watching a movie and you're like, this is so untrue, so unreal. But this is the kind of book you could see it happening. It takes place in the literary world, publishing space, because it follows this white author who assumed yellowface in a sense. She didn't physically put on paint to appear or something that made her appear Asian, but her friend died, and her friend was also an author, and she was jealous and felt like her career wasn't, this white girl, her career wasn't going the way she hoped it would, and so she took up her friend's manuscripts that was pretty much a solid draft and she edited it and passed it off as her own. And everything from the start of that, it started like, I was just like, my eyes were open when it started, because I was like, what? She's describing how the friend is choking and she can't help her, and she's like dying in her final moments, and then the thought process of like stealing the manuscript and everything, and then even to the very end she's describing everything, and when she finally gets confronted and it might come out that, you know, she did this thing, how she's gonna spin it. So it very much gave Karen, but it kind of, you know, kind of felt bad for her, because you see where she was coming from, and that world, literary world, can be like toxic, you know. It can be, it's not gonna baby you, it's not gonna be like, yeah, you have talent, like only so many people make it, you know what I mean? So there was that, and like dealing with success or lack of success and stuff like that, and, you know, being honest and choosing to continually lie instead of admitting something. And, you know, it talks about allyship in spaces, and can you be a not of this particular ethnic group and contribute to that space and stuff like that. And, you know, it was just like, but the word I use is grimy. Every character, even the characters that weren't bad, from the people on the publishing team, the agents, the parents, like the family, the friends, everybody was grimy. Like their behavior, like the mother of the friend who died, the mother didn't want to read the book, the mother confronted her about it, is it true? And she basically like knew, they had it unspoken, like they both knew what was up, but the mother couldn't. She was so in grief that she couldn't bring herself to look at the manuscript, so she just kind of let it fly. But this book was crazy, and what made it crazier is you could see that this could actually happen. Like it's not that far off, you know, as far as fiction goes from reality. I gave it a 4 just because throughout the book was very whiny. The character, which it was written well, don't get me wrong, it's real, that's what made it real. That Karen, they can be so like, I hate to say, but like very entitled, you know, very entitled even to something they think isn't theirs, but because they had it rough, I have a right to be a brat, you know what I mean? And from the book started, she was very whiny, hating on her friend, the envy, and those are real emotions. But yeah, it's ridiculous at some point. Like you have to grow up and do something else, and or write a better book, you know what I mean? Like get it together. So for that reason I gave it a 4. But my god, this book was something else. Like if you just want something that's gonna like hold your attention and like you're not gonna be bored, you might be a little annoyed. I know book like negative stuff is happening and you just can't look away. Like it's not, nobody's, well, somebody did die. I was gonna say nobody's dying, somebody did die, but you know, like nobody's actively doing, I can't say that either, that nobody's actively doing anything criminal. Anyways, it's a book that you would get really entertained by. So between this and Africa is Not a Country, for fiction, I'd say Yellowface this month, like top recommended, and for non-fiction, I'd say Africa is Not a Country. So my final book, this one was a 4 out of 5 for me. This one is called Tiger's Eye by Karen Robards, the French would say Robard. This is another like London underground book, gaming hell type book. Did I say 4 stars? I mean 3 stars. It was a 3-star for me. It was alright for historical fiction. Like as I'm looking at the book blurb, I can't even remember what it was about. Oh, I know. I remember now. Yeah. So this lady, it was one of those kidnapping situations, but he's the king of the underground, and so, or the underworld, the London underworld. So any contracts for any nefarious activities should go through him. So one of his subordinates goes ahead and takes a contract without going through him, so basically cutting him out of it. So he finds out about it, of course, because his network is the London Underground network, but the person goes and takes his contract. So he rescues her, not really because he wants to, but because he's gonna like off the person who took this contract and then take the money for the contract. And he was going to hand her over, whether or not she was going to die, that was it. Because when they contracted to kidnap her, they planned to kill her. But yeah, anyways, he keeps her, they end up falling in love. And along the way, they both get injured, like he gets shot and she gets shot, and they're stuck in this brothel trying to heal because nobody's expected to look for them there, and then when it gets out that they're there, they come back with another attempt. I think his life, they attempted to kill him like 3 times, and as each time it's, you know, as it happens each time, she's worried about him, and they're like, they have to move, and then she like stays with him, and she's like, well, I can stay with you, but I don't really want to be your mistress. But in the end, of course, she like falls in love, and she's like, you know what, I didn't want this for myself, but I'll be a mistress. And then of course, so all of this is because her dad doesn't care about her. Her dad married somebody who was like pretty much her age, and she married him off. He married her off, and he cares about like appearances more than anything else. So when he marries her off, it's expected. He married her off to somebody on who for outward appearances is like a good person, or looks good. He doesn't care if if he's good or not. When she's run away, and there's a risk that she's become some like nobody's mistress, not just a nobody, like king of the underworld. Like he's extremely like, he's so like mad that he pays the man again. So he's already paid her dowry to the husband. He pays her again to like take her back. Whatever he's doing with her, just don't let there be a scandal. And then all of this is because the husband wanted to get rid of her because he got the dowry already. He's a gambler, he's a degenerate, he doesn't care, he's a drunkard, whatever. And so he's trying to get rid of her, and he figures that the kidnapping scheme didn't work, but the dad is willing to pay for me to take her back. I'll take the money again, and then still kill her. Or send her away, tell them that I'm sending her to France or something, to Paris, to spare the gossip, whatever it is, and still take the money. So anyways, in the end, she gets rescued by this guy, Alec, and the same guy who's abducted her, basically. And, well, not abducted, well, after the foiled abduction, he's like taking her. And so, yeah, I guess, you know, they found it along the way. I think the secondary characters made it interesting. So there was this like jealousy because he grew up in the slums, and he grew up with this girl who's like a prostitute. She's like the madame of the house, and so they would sleep together casually, but it didn't mean anything to him, whereas to her, she wanted him to marry her, etc. But he, you know, is in love with this lady from their aristocracy, and you know, so there was jealousy on both sides, and so there was some drama with that. And then he's got a really loyal friend who kind of helps him through things and takes care of them, and he actually wants that on the lady. So there was that little like triangle thing going on, but which made it a little more entertaining as well. But yeah, it was okay. You know, it was a 3. It wasn't like, oh my god, I absolutely need to read this again type book, but I don't feel like I'm wasting my time. I don't hate it. Yeah, so I think that was 7 books. Starting a few more. June is celebrated as Caribbean American Heritage Month, so I'm trying to read Caribbean books, and I try to read one at least once a month because I'm a part of a book club that does, but I'm, you know, trying to read a couple more of those this month. So let's see how it goes. I also have a few advanced reader copies that I need to get through, and because I didn't get through many of those that I requested, so I have to get through those with some good time, leave those notes, and yeah, I have lots of other stuff happening in life. So let's see, summer's officially here. Yay, but also crazy. We're at the end of this month, we would have been through half of the year already. So yeah, that's it. See you guys next month.